It's the fantasy football playoffs, and every week just matters that much more as we get closer to holding that championship trophy. And if you're knocked out of fantasy football, well, here's the info you need to know to be a better NFL fan, or maybe a better of the NFL. What's up, folks? It is the NFL Week 15 Injury Report. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus. What is up, folks? I'm your host here, the DJ Doc, and it is another week, so it's another injury report time. NFL Week 15 season is flying by. Playoffs are here for fantasy, whether it's IDP fantasy, normal fantasy. Injuries matter that much more this week, so I shouldn't have to sell it to you. You're already here. And look, folks, cheers. Welcome to you if you're joining me right now. Appreciate y'all checking this out. If it's your first time or if you've been rocking with me all season, I love you all the same. And let me break down what this episode is going to be, because I'm sure you've seen some other NFL injuries type stuff, little updates, maybe short videos, stuff like that. Well, this is taking a little bit of a different approach. It is IDP Plus. Around here, we love defense. We love all 22 players on the field and all aspects of football. So this is actually going to be an IDP defensive focus injury outlook on the biggest players in fantasy IDP. However, there's a good chance if you play fantasy IDP, you also play normal offensive fantasy football. Also, there's a good chance if you just stumbled on this video, maybe you were looking for some offensive fantasy football injury updates. Do not worry. I've got you covered there as well. Large majority of the show, like I said, is going to focus on an in-depth injury analysis of the biggest defensive names. At the end, I will do an offensive rundown where I give you the quick and dirty, what you need to know about the biggest offensive names in fantasy football. Guys like T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, those sorts. So we've got a ton to talk about. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. I want to start this week off with some interesting ones here. First off, pretty unfortunate, but kind of one that we could see coming a little bit. Trey Hendrickson for the Cincinnati Bengals, defensive end, guy who had the most sacks in the NFL last season, has been on a tear for the past 2 seasons. Obviously went through that, is he going to get signed, contract deal, sitting out, yada, yada, yada. Picked up what they called a hip injury, then played through it in a couple weeks, and then he re-injured it. And, Zach Taylor was originally not that big of a deal. He may not play in the short week, but he should be back soon. Well, that was about 5-6 weeks ago and still wasn't at practice. Now, finally, it's been revealed he just got core muscle surgery. So, your core muscles here, you've got your obliques on the side, which are highlighted. You've got your rectus abdominis. Something was going on there where it required him to have surgery, which puts him on the season and the IR. So, you've probably already been surviving without Trey Hendrickson in your lineups, and you're going to have to keep doing the same because he's out for the rest of the season there. Now, here's the biggest kind of breaking news and newest one, and really kind of weird injury that it stinks, but it's happening, so we got to talk about it. Steelers outside linebacker, one of the best defensive players in all of football, TJ Watt, out. So he's not practicing today. Steelers play on Monday. Apparently the story is, and it's still sources and somewhat confirmed, don't have the full picture, but essentially it came out today that TJ Watt was in the hospital today after feeling some discomfort. He's getting his lung further medical evaluation. Weird, kind of was this, I felt weird after practice, chest pain, let me just go ahead and get it checked. Well, now it's coming out that he suffered an injury while he was getting treatment on Wednesday at the facility. And not only is he in the hospital today, he was in the hospital since that injury yesterday. So here's why I'm a little bit pessimistic on it. One, he's been there since Wednesday, so he spent the whole night and at least day. We haven't really been able to get much more updates there. But medical evaluation deemed it necessary for him to not only be admitted into the hospital, but then also be kept overnight for observation. Now, that could mean a lot of things, but they don't typically do that just for a little bit of a scare. So something's going on here. And then you immediately think to the Tyrod Taylor situation where a few years ago, Team Doc was trying to give him a pain injection before the game near his ribs. He punctured the lung cavity and he suffered a pneumothorax, which is also just layman's term is a collapsed lung. So you see here, anything that enters that, lung cavity, lung field, you're going to disrupt essentially the air in that space, because it's all different pressurized system. Everything kind of in our body has a very nice homeostatic way that it likes to keep. And if you bring a foreign object in there, it's going to cause something like this. Now, bit speculative on what's going on. It's hard to not, think that this was some type of treatment gone wrong. I've seen some people speculate on dry needling, which is, a therapeutic dry needling is similar to acupuncture. It's something that physical therapists and rehab professionals can do once you get certified. The biggest risk there is immunothorax, but it's like you have to not only have poor technique, you have to use the wrong needle side, you have to have poor entry site. Like, it takes a lot of negligence to get there. So I hope that's not the case, as someone who practices that and is an advocate for that. But we've got more to figure out. What we do know is TJ Watt is, I would call him unlikely for Monday night, and potentially further. It's a big question mark at this point. Got to have a pivot point, unfortunately. More info is going to come out, but this was just kind of like, whoa, where the hell did this come from? Very, very unfortunate news out of Pittsburgh there. All right, moving along to some Carolina Panthers here. Let's talk two of their best defenders, their leading tackler and the best cover guy, quarterback Jaycee Horn and linebacker Christian Rozeboom. Both those guys missed the week before, 2 weeks ago, and then they're coming off a bye. Rozeboom dealing with the hamstring, Jaycee Horn dealing with a concussion. Both those guys fully practicing in back-to-back days. Great sign for them being able to play. So both of them squarely probable. Expect both those guys to be out there. All right, moving to the Chicago Bears. Let's start with the bad news. Kyler Gordon picked up an injury last week during game time against the Packers. Picked up a groin injury. Did not practice today or yesterday. Not a great sign if you have no practice by Thursday. Typically, that means more than likely he's going to be out this week. Groin injury. Groin is kind of an umbrella term. It refers to the muscles of both your lower abdomen and your inner hip, or your adductor, adductor, that allows your leg to move inward, pulls, the muscles pull on the leg, pulls it inward, whatever. Typically rotational type of movements are difficult here. Groin strains are annoying. They're nagging injuries similar to hamstrings and calves, muscle strains. Going to be out probably at least this week and potentially next week is what I'm expecting for Kyler Gordon. Now, on some better news for the Chicago Bears, quarterbacks Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson. Johnson with the groin, Tyreek Stevenson with the hip. Both practicing this week, which is obviously a very good sign for their availability for Sunday. Tyreek Stevenson's been out the past couple weeks. Looks like he's making his way back. Jalen Johnson returned a week ago and has been playing pretty well. So you're likely down Kyler Gordon at one cornerback spot, but you're getting two cornerbacks that should be trending in the right direction in Stevenson and Johnson. Now, moving over to Cleveland, who will be playing the Chicago Bears this week up in Soldier Field in a very, very cold game. Two defensive starters who are not practicing and one who returned to practice today. Let's start with the good news. Safety Grant Delpit. He had illness/groin, did not practice yesterday, but he's back at practice today. Whenever you typically see rest or illness added in there with another type of body part, or if it's on its own, it's usually a pretty good sign. Usually a sign that, hey, they're going to be out, maybe limited the next day, but they should be able to play through it. Most guys play through illness. Most guys obviously play through rest. So if that's actually attached to the injury, that's kind of good news. That's something you want to see. Now, the other two starters, defensive tackle Mason Graham and cornerback Denzel Ward. Graham dealing with a rib injury, Denzel Ward dealing with a calf injury. Both those guys did not practice back-to-back days yesterday and today. Typically, if you are not practicing by Thursday, most cases you are missing the game. So one's to watch, but calling both those guys squarely doubtful. The rib injury with Graham, typically guys can, play through it if they get one practice in. Calf injuries with those muscle strains are a little bit more, you want to see them limited and then full. So I would say Ward is more likely out than Graham, but right now both those guys are more doubtful than questionable. All right, another unfortunate case where we're going over to Detroit to talk about Lions safety Kerby Joseph. Now, he's been dealing with this just knee injury. Haven't really given us much about, is it a ligament? Is it a soft tissue thing? What's going on there? Just call it a knee. Technically, that's all they have to say. But he's been, He fought through it in a game, I think, versus the Chiefs is where he was in and out of the lineup. Then there was like, all right, should be back soon. Didn't practice for like 3 weeks. Then he tried to return to practice last week, and then he was downgraded to not practicing, and it didn't go well. Well, it looks like we're doing some of the same this week. Tried to practice yesterday, limited practice, and then today downgraded to a did not practice. Not a good sign. Clearly, the knee is not responding well to the increase in activity from rehab and actually trying to do football things and get on the field. So, unfortunately, another week where it looks like the Lions are going to be out with their starting safety, Kerby Joseph. Now, starting safety opposite him, Brian Branch, is out for the season with an Achilles tendon tear. So that back end, Terrion Arnold's out for the season already. That Legion of Whom with Kelvin Shepherd, he's done a good job, but they're going to be tested against Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua this week and Matt Stafford. So tough to really favor that secondary against that wide receiver core and quarterback combination. All right, moving to the Houston Texans, arguably the best defense in the NFL. They got a couple guys here who some good news, some bad news, like we've been kind of seeing. So defensive end, Danico Autry with a knee, linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair with an ankle, both not practicing. Look, Wednesday, this is why I do this on Thursday night, because Wednesday practices, you got to take them with a grain of salt, especially later in the year. Sometimes some guys just need a little bit of extra day of rest to kind of rest and recuperate their body, and they're good to go, Thursday. Thursday is really where you get in that good idea of who's going to play and who's not going to be out there. Danico Autry and Azeez Al-Shaair both practicing today, both returning to practice, on track to play on Sunday. Cornerback Kamari Lassiter with the foot injury. Now, he didn't practice in back-to-back days, but he's been playing through this injury. Against the Chiefs last week, he didn't practice Wednesday, Thursday, practiced a little bit Friday, and was able to play through the injury. He's a tough son of a gun, and he played pretty damn well. I believe he came up with an interception against the Chiefs last week. So I'm not ready to rule him out. I think he's got a good chance to continue to play through that foot injury. Want to watch the one you want to watch closely tomorrow to see if he's out there. But if he does practice tomorrow, I'm expecting him to push through and play. Now, a guy who I'm a little bit less optimistic about him being able to push through and play, and that's defensive tackle DeForest Buckner. Huge loss to that Colts defensive line middle of the season. Part of the reason why they've been on this downward spiral that not a lot of people are talking about. He had a neck injury. Now, if you've listened to me at all this season, you know that I believe one thing, and mostly all medical professionals do. Neck injuries in football do not mix very well. The neck is a very fragile point of the body. The neck takes a lot of force and contact in the game of football. And if something is disrupted, you don't really want to mess with it. We've seen multiple guys have to retire and be out for the season. Chris Carson, Zach Moss, Nnamdi Amadubuike, and DeForest Buckner, he went on IR, and there was something I read today about it being a herniated disc. That is something that doesn't just go away. It's something that could flare up if it's hit inappropriately or if he moves his head in a different direction that doesn't feel great. Like, that's a pretty streaky type of injury. Now, I admire him for trying to come back and play. He's had back-to-back limited practices. I would think they want to see him have a full practice to be comfortable with rolling him out there on a real game live action. But this is one to watch. Like I said, I'd say he's probably more doubtful than questionable because he hasn't had that full practice yet. If he practices in full tomorrow, then yeah, he's on track, should be good to go. If it's just another limited practice, I think the Colts use this as more of a ramp-up week while their quarterback situation is a mess anyway, and he's not out there. But a true question mark, kind of a scary injury, hopefully no re-aggravation there. Now, a guy I do feel confident who's not going to be out there for the Colts defense, Sauce Gardner, calf injury. They called it a grade 2 calf strain. I spoke about this last week, looking at more of a 3 to 6 week absence there. This would be a second week miss, still not at practice. Don't have a lot to change there. Don't expect him out there for this week and potentially next week as well. Now, a guy who's got some positive injury news, Trent McDuffie, stud cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs, a guy who went down in the game, looked pretty not great, hyperextended his knee. Thankfully, it wasn't any ligament damage there. He returned to practice on Wednesday, so he sat out that rest of that game, but he was out there in a limited fashion yesterday. He was, again, back at practice today in a limited practice. He's on track to playing Sunday. Typically, if you practice on Wednesday, that's a really good sign. Now, he's not out of the woods yet. We got to make sure that he can fully sprint and be ready to go, but he is on a good trajectory to be able to play on Sunday. One you want to keep an eye on for what the official report is, but I am optimistic that he can get out there. A guy I'm not optimistic on, defensive tackle Jalen Carter, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. A couple weeks, not last week, the week before, came out, as they were preparing for the Chargers, that he had procedures on both of his shoulders. Doesn't seem like, originally they made it seem like surgery. Now it seems like it's more of just like injection, PRP type, some type of, he's clearly dealing with shoulder injuries. I would guess labrum issues through subluxations of the shoulder, where he's probably going to need off-season surgery. But he wants to try to get it to a point where he can feel better and more productive for the actual postseason run, assuming the Eagles make it. But they do have a decent lead on the Cowgirls there, so I would expect them to. Estimated, the Eagles have only do two walkthroughs. They played Monday night. They're a pretty beat up team right now. They just kind of give an estimation. They haven't really actually practiced, but they would estimate that he was not at practice either today or yesterday. So hard to imagine he's going to be out there on Sunday, but one to watch here. They didn't really give a timetable on this, on how long he's going to be out. They said it could potentially be multi-week, but does not look like he's going to return for this week against the Raiders. Now, another guy who looks like he's going to be missing another week, linebacker Tatum Bethune. He has stepped in very admirably for when Fred Warner went down. He's kind of taken over that defense, but unfortunately, he suffered a high ankle sprain a couple weeks ago, and it looks like he's going to still be out even coming off the bye. Typically, if a guy doesn't practice off a bye, that's even more of an indication they're not going to play that week. He hasn't practiced today, Thursday, or yesterday. High ankle sprain above your ankle refers to the ligaments, syndesmosis, it's almost like a webbing of ligaments, as you see it there, between your two lower leg bones, your tibia and your fibula. Harder to damage, which means it takes longer to recover than a low ankle sprain. Low ankle sprain is one of those you really think like when you just, roll your ankle playing basketball or something like that. Those aren't as big of a deal. This one is typically more of a 3 to 4 week injury type deal. This will be his third week out. So hopefully he's got a shot to return next week. They shouldn't really need him going up against the Titans team coming off their second win of the season. All right. Some good news for Baltimore potentially on their back end. Safety Darius Washington, a guy who stepped in and helped solidify their back end last season, suffered its torn Achilles in the offseason. Looked like there was a good chance he was going to be out for the season, but he returned to practice this week and was fully practicing both yesterday and today. Great sign that he potentially is going to get activated and have a shot to play this week. So one to watch there. Not sure exactly how he's going to fit in the rotation, but it is a good sign that he's fully practicing. And again, he kind of helped solidify that back end. I know they traded for Alohi Gilman this year, but this Ravens secondary made Aaron Rodgers look like prime Aaron Rodgers. So going up against Joe Burrow, they could use all the help they could get this week. All right, to the Buffalo Bills, who have a massive, massive AFC East matchup between the New England Patriots, trying to get rematch, and hopefully they're going to get some guys back. Both defensive end Joey Bosa and linebacker Terrell Bernard return to practice this week. Bosa dealing with a hamstring injury, Bernard dealing with an ankle, I believe it's an elbow injury, but they had him on the report as an ankle injury. His elbow was in a sling, so I'm going to probably say elbow. But either way, good sign is both those guys have been practicing both Wednesday and today. Only a limited practice. Would like for them to ramp it up to a full practice tomorrow, but they return to practice. Again, if you practice on Wednesday, that's usually a good indication you're going to try to give it a go for Sunday. Would be a huge boost for this defense if they can get both those starters back out there against Drake May and this suddenly very good Patriots team. Not ready to say they're both definitely going to play, but I would call it more probable at this point than questionable. Still one you want to make sure that they either get a full practice or are good to go based off the injury report tomorrow. Could definitely see them being questionable and it kind of being up to a game time decision. So just kind of want to see, would love them to just be full practice tomorrow and make our lives easy. But it's the NFL. That doesn't always happen. A guy who is fully practicing, Bengals defensive end Shemar Stewart, the rookie, coming off, trying to get activated off the IR. A great sign of you doing that is fully practicing both yesterday and today, which he has done. This is another one. They're just calling it a knee injury. not really telling us a whole lot, so I can't really spend a lot of time there because we don't know exactly what's going on. Switching over to the Raiders camp, they had 3 starters who were not practicing yesterday, but they're all back at practice, which is a great sign today. This is why, again, Wednesday injury reports, got to take them with a grain of salt. Hard to make your injury determinations just off Wednesday. That's Max Crosby, defensive end, linebacker Jamal Adams, and safety Jeremy Chin, all dealing with a little bit more, what I would say, more hurt than actually injured. Just a little banged up, bruised up, but they were all upgraded to being back at practice today. Expect all of them to be able to go against the Eagles offense, which is not only have they been poor at putting up points, but they've been turning the ball over a little bit. So that's maybe an interesting opportunity. Max Crosby, Lane Johnson still not at practice. Hendrickson not at practice. Max Crosby against a couple backups could be a nice situation there. All right. Another Colts player, it's cornerback who's likely not going to be out there. Charvarius, not likely, definitely not going to be out there. Cornerback Charvarius Ward unfortunately suffered another concussion. I believe it's his 3rd this season. So he's been put on the IR and he's going to miss at least 4 games, if not shut down for the season. Now, kind of depends on if the Colts make the playoffs or not. Yeah, a couple weeks ago, they seemed like a lock to make the playoffs. Now they're in this free fall where not quite sure if they're going to even be able to grab that last wild card spot. So Ward's definitely going to be out there at least 4 games. We'll see if he returns this year based on where the Colts are in the playoff race and everything there. Another guy who looks like he's going to be out, Giants outside linebacker Kayvon Thibodeaux. He's had this shoulder injury, not a lot given there. He hasn't been at practice for several weeks. I'm surprised he was not put on the IR. I figured coming off the bye week, maybe they think he's going to have a chance to play this week. No practice yesterday, no practice today. Really has been like crickets. Obviously, rookie Abdul Carter, assuming he doesn't sleep through any more meetings, he would be the guy who's going to fill in there and get a full allotment of snaps with Kayvon being out. So expect Kayvon to be out and Abdul Carter to be getting those snaps there. A veteran who is missing practice as well, linebacker for the Commandos, Bobby Wagner, back-to-back no practices with a knee injury. Now, this is one he's been playing through, but older guy, lost season, getting close to the end of the year. Kind of could go either way with this one with Bobby Wagner. Again, not a great sign that he did not practice at all yesterday or today. However, he knows the defense enough that if he really doesn't need to practice a ton. So a true question mark for Bobby Wagner this week. Just calling it a knee. Not really sure exactly what's going on there as well. Another one to watch in this primetime matchup here between the Patriots and the Bills. Their best pass rusher, outside linebacker Harold Landry, he got downgraded to a did not practice today after practicing yesterday. Always kind of a red flag for me, unless there's a very obvious reasoning, which I was not able to find looking through the Reap Reporter stuff. Did he get injured during practice? Like, what's going on here to where they needed to downgrade him to not practicing after practicing yesterday? So one you definitely want to watch. Calling it a knee injury. Did he get injured in practice? Did something pop up? This is one where if he's not practicing again tomorrow, this is a red flag that he may not be able to be out there for Sunday. A couple other defensive starters, this time in Arizona, who are not practicing as well. Cornerback Max Melton, who returned to practice yesterday with his heel injury after not playing for a couple weeks, and then he was downgraded to no practice today. Not a good sign. Like Kerby Joseph, the injury is not really responding that well. And then safety Dardian Taylor Demerson with the ankle. He's the guy who plays opposite Budda Baker. He's not practicing with the ankle injury. So both guys who are starters on that back end looking like they're not going to be out there. Now, there is some good news for the Cardinal secondary on the other side. Budda Baker, Will Johnson, both fully practicing today with thumb injuries. It looks like they're going to be able to go. And then Walter Nolan, the impressive rookie, he's been back at practice for back-to-back days. Looks like he may be on track to giving it a go for Sunday. All right. If you were just here for the defensive side of the news, mission complete, baby. We are done. Whoa. I didn't know I could do that. But hey, I guess we learn something new every day. But yes, the defensive side of the show is done. I'm now going to do a very quick offensive injury rundown. Again, not as in-depth. Hit the wave tops. Tell you what you need to know. And then let's get on out of here and enjoy our Thursday night football game here. All right. So we've got Commandos quarterback Jayden Daniels. He had that elbow dislocation, and then he re-injured the injury last week. Thankfully, no structural damage, but he has already been ruled out for this week. He returned to practice today, so good chance he plays next week. I believe they play the Eagles next week. All right. Another quarterback who has been doing the song and dance of not practicing, then back at practice, Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. I'm getting tired of it. But no practice yesterday. It was a rest designation, so that should tell us all we need to know. He practiced today. He's going to be perfectly fine. Now, whether he plays well is completely different, but he should be healthy. A guy who is likely not going to be out there and is not healthy, and that is Geno Smith, quarterback for the Raiders. Shoulder, back injury, back-to-back no practices. It's going to be the Kenny Pickett revenge game on Sunday, as he was their backup quarterback last season. Now, going to the Cardinals, their best wide receiver in Marvin Harrison. Well, maybe. Michael Wilson's been on an absolute tear. But still not back at practice. Back-to-back no practices with that heel injury that's kept him out the past couple weeks. So, unfortunately, not looking good for Sunday as they go up against a very vaunted Houston Texans defense. Some better news, a guy who likely will return this week, Bears wide receiver one, Rome Odunze. He's had back-to-back limited practices off a foot injury that kept him out of the Green Bay game. Looks like, hey, he may be good to go in that very Arctic cold Soldier Field. I think it's like calling for like 11 degrees there. So I don't know how much passing the ball it's going to be, but he should be out there. Another guy who's trending in the right direction, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins. Back-to-back limited practices. This was a weird one where he got checked for a concussion twice, got cleared to come back in the game, and then all of a sudden after the game got put in concussion protocol. He started the week with a limited practice. He's practicing again. In order to clear concussion protocol, you have to have a limited practice and a full practice. The fact he was out there practicing on Wednesday is typically a very, very good sign. He still needs the full practice on Friday. So not out of the woods yet, but trending in a very good direction. Now, a guy who's trending in an even better direction, talking about concussions, wide receiver for the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb. Full practice today. Fully expect him to be cleared as he had 10 days coming off that Thanksgiving game, or Thursday night game, to be good to go. Now, he may be without his starting tight end in Jake Ferguson. Ferguson was limited in practice with a calf injury yesterday and then downgraded to no practice. Now, he was out there on the side training, and usually if guys are out there, they're still pushing a play this week. So not ready to rule him out, but squarely a question mark for Sunday Night Football. Okay, moving on. We've got Houston Texans running back Woody Marks. He is back at practice today after no practice yesterday. He should be good to go, which is a good sign because Nick Chubb is not practicing, so he's going to definitely get a majority of the touches there. All right, now we have Devontae Adams, a guy who's been kind of doing the Lamar thing about not practicing but still playing. No practice to start the week either day. He's been playing through this hamstring injury, and he's been tearing it up on the field, so I have no reason to not expect him to still play on Sunday. I think that's the expectation at this point. Keep an eye on it, but if he's out there, have him in your lineups. Don't be dumb. And then Saints running back Alvin Kamara, still not back at practice. Devin Neal has kind of assumed that role as RB1. He's played pretty well. Looks like another week without Kamara as he's not practicing. But we do get the return of Mr. Tyrone Tracy for the New York Football Giants. He is fully practicing both yesterday and today, coming off the bye week. Picked up a hip injury, wind up not being too big of a deal. He's going up against a terrible Washington Commanders defense. I love his matchup this week. I think he's a sneaky play in Tyrone Tracy. We also have Jets running back, Breece Hall, who is back at practice after no practice yesterday, which means he's going to be on track to play on Sunday, which is good because the Jets may not have a quarterback. Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor still not practicing. Maybe Brady Cook again, which is just bad news for everybody involved. And then a couple guys for Monday night. You've got Devon Achane for the Dolphins. Went out of the game late with a rib injury. Looks like he just landed on the ball. He was at practice today. He's fully expected to go on Monday. And then finally, DK Metcalf. He, after the game last week, got evaluated in Baltimore and stayed an extra day at a hospital because of some stomach pain. But thankfully, he was good to go, kind of checked out, and he was at practice today in full. He said he's going to be good to go. All right, folks, that is it for your NFL Week 15 injury report. Appreciate y'all checking it out. All I ask for is a simple like and subscribe to let the bosses know I'm doing something right. Hey, new series this year. Hopefully, was playing around with it a little bit. Hopefully, I've got it down at Week 15 to a point that most people are liking it. Still open to feedback. So if you got anything for me or a guy that I didn't talk about, drop it in the comments. I will do my best to get to it. probably the best way for most up-to-date injury news is to go ahead and follow me on X at the DGenDoc. That's where I'm always posting multiple times a day about different updates for different players, offense, defense. I will even talk about kickers. If it's football and it's injuries, I'm probably talking about it. All right, folks, from the DGenDoc here at IDP Plus. Enjoy your NFL Week 15 week. Hope you pull some dubs, and I am out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.